I want to thank you for the comments that I've been getting over the last few weeks on studying Hebrews chapter 11. Several people telling me that it answered a lot of questions for them. It has strengthened their faith. It has changed their definition of faith. And they're enjoying that. They're seeing God's hand in everything and how true faith keeps God in the driver's seat. Do you agree with that? That true faith in God keeps him in the driver's seat? And we looked at Hebrews 11:1, and it's important that we understand the words that are there. Do words matter and the definitions of words matter? It does. And if you take a word and use a wrong definition of it, you can end up with an erroneous view of what something is saying. In the Old Testament King James, it says God is a terrible God. Depending on what you mean by terrible, it either means, when the King James was written, awesome. Awesome and frightful in a good way. He's a terrible God. Isn't that true? But if you change the meaning of terrible to, it's awful, then if God is terrible, same word, different meaning, you end up with a right or a wrong conclusion. Does that make sense? So it's simple. Yet we don't like to think about that. If we already like what a verse is saying, leave it alone, whether it's right or wrong. But that's a problem. And the reality is, when we fully understand it, it does not take away, it adds to our relationship with God, and it adds to our faith. We're much more confident. In fact, the faith that many people have is they think it is just believing in something that could happen, and just believing that it will, not having proof that it will happen. That our faith, believing that it will happen, is all that's necessary to make it happen. And so their faith is based on something they're not sure of, something they hope for. Hope by what definition? There's the earthly hope, and that is, and we've talked about this so many times, and I hope it's starting to get ingrained. Earthly hope, and I use the word earthly, not worldly, because when we use the word worldly, we often assume that means sinful. Now, I don't mean it that way, but while we live here on the earth in America, if we hope something's going to happen, like if I hope my kids are going to come at Christmas time, are we sure they're coming? No, we hope so. It means they may or they may not. And faith, they think, is just believing so hard that they will come, that God will make them come. So it is rooted in uncertainty, trying to be certain of the uncertain. When biblical faith and biblical hope is, we put our hope, we put all our dependency on survival on something, because it said you will survive here. So we put our hope in Christ, because in Christ he says, I will rescue you and you will be delivered. Okay, then I'm putting all my hope there. Now it's my faith is putting hope, my trust in something that has been declared by God as true, and I'm believing him. Does that make sense? All right, so I was out in Lexington this week, and I saw a sign. It was in a bathroom, I think. And I ignore a lot of signs in bathrooms. You know why. But this one said, and it was, I think the place is owned by Christians, and I'm sure they're committed. They're putting things on the wall. Verses is great. But it said this: faith is not believing God can, but that he will. How many of you heard that? Faith is not believing God can, but that he will. Have you heard that before? Well, what if I'm asking God for something he doesn't want to give me? Can he give it to me? Does that mean he will? Actually, if he knows something I don't know and it's not good for me, but I'm asking for it, I hope he trumps over me and says, no, I'm not giving it to you because it's not good for you. All right, so is it a lack of faith for me to say, no, God could give it to me, but if he chooses not to, he's got a reason for that? You see how that's not just faith that God can, it's faith that God can and he knows more than me. But there are a lot of people say, no. That's not real faith. Real faith is not believing God can, because God can do anything. Faith is believing he will. Give me something that was uncertain. We're not talking about the promises of God, of prophecy that he claimed. We're talking about things that I want. Let me give you an example, and this is all kind of redundant from the last 2 weeks, but it's to remind you of that and then take you somewhere. You're going to like today. I really believe that. The book of Daniel. You remember Daniel, his 3 friends? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's always a nighttime story. I'm sorry, it's Abednego. It's just close. Almost had you, didn't I, Dusty? Yeah, it's like, how's he pronounce that? In Daniel chapter 3, these men, young boys, actually, when they were called on and the trumpets blew for them to bow to foreign gods in the land they had been captured from their land and taken to their land, and they were to bow before foreign gods. Do you think it takes faith in your God to say when everybody else bows, we'll be standing there like obviously to everybody? Do you think a lot of Christians say, I'm not bowing, but I'm going to be tying my shoe? Right? And they stood there. Does that take faith or not? And so then they're taken before Nebuchadnezzar. And this is what it says in Daniel chapter 3, verse 13. Furious with rage. Is he slightly angry? Look, when somebody's mad at you, you can tell. When they are furious with rage, you just want to duck. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Doesn't give him time to answer. It's not a question like, is this true? It's like, what? Are they really telling me this? I mean, you Christians you what? You believe that? Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I have made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Well, let me tell you which God. Because God says, I will deliver you from Nebuchadnezzar's hands. Now, let me ask you, how many different ways can God deliver them from his hand? He could make the furnace immediately, the fire just disappear. It could start snowing in the furnace. Could he do that? Yeah, he can. Do they believe that God will do that? No, they don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to be delivered. They are going to be delivered from Nebuchadnezzar's hand. Well, let's see what they say. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't even need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. Stop there. God can. Right? God can rescue them. What? He didn't say he would. They're not. What did I say? Well, they would be delivered. I haven't said how yet. Okay. My family keeps me on my toes. Yeah, no, believe me. My dad, look, I answer to people. But they're not sure what I'm saying yet, but hang in there with me. Is God going to deliver them some way from the furnace? Do they believe that? Yes. Do they know how it's going to happen? No. What they're saying, but God could do it this way, protecting us from the furnace. Right? Isn't that what they're saying? He could do that. Watch this. And he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. You see, what they're saying is, our God is able to deliver me from that problem, but he may not. But if he doesn't, it's not because you won. If you put me in the furnace and I die, who wins? If I'm Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, now think about this legitimately with me. For all of eternity, who am I going to be with? God. I either have to explain why I worship the other gods to live a little longer down here, or I go meet him with, you let me come early because I stood for you. Are you hearing me? Ultimately, they would be delivered from Nebuchadnezzar, either by God quenching the ability of that furnace to burn them, or letting it burn them and delivering them to heaven. In either way, are they delivered from the hand of Nebuchadnezzar? Yes. So what gave them the confidence to say, throw us in the furnace, because our God can deliver us from it or not. Either way, we're going to obey. The only thing that could have given them confidence to face that is if they're not afraid of what comes after death, they're actually looking forward to it. Because of that faith, what did God do? It's not faith, oh no, you can't touch this because my God said, well, he didn't say, but I just know, like I really believe in my heart he's going to make this furnace not hurt us. Is that what happened? No, their faith in God, giving God control to kill us or not. God said, I want to honor that. Are you tracking yet? All right, here's why I bring that up. I want you to go, this is so important to understanding Hebrews 11. And it's just a slight review, and then we're gonna nail some new stuff that I think you're gonna like. Almost every week I have stated Hebrews 11 actually starts in Hebrews 10. There's a quote that sets up for chapter 11. It tells us what he's about to try to prove. And it starts in verse 36. I want you to look at that. This is the context of chapter 11. Chapter 11 is an explanation, or it builds on these verses. Watch this. Verse 36. You need to persevere. All right, so pause right there. So what he's about to tell us is to encourage us to do what? To persevere. Keep that in mind. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, so who's in the driver's seat? When I've done the will of God, or when God has done my will because I believed he would? Which is it? When I'm doing the will of God, I want him controlling me. I'm not using my faith to try to control him to give me what I want. Is it making sense yet? Keep going. You will receive what you hope for, what you earthly hope for, what you're not sure you're going to get, but you hope to get. What he promised. You have to be looking for what he promised. All right, well, what did he promise? There are a lot of people who will try to go to all kinds of promises now, and there's validity to that. I don't want to get into all that right now, but what promise is he talking about? He gives us a quote. And here it is. In just a little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. What's that talking about? Y'all smart. You know this. What's that talking about? The Lord is coming back. If you believe that, you will be able to not only have faith that saves, but you will live by faith. What was it that gave Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego the ability to walk by faith in light of the unknown circumstances? Is when they said, yeah, but even if we die, There's a future that God's promised. You see that? So that's what I want to focus on, the context today of looking at Hebrews 11 in light of the end times in which, folks, we live. If you don't believe me, go back today and watch the news. If you know anything about prophecy, the stuff that we're having, look, last night I watched a video from a guy that I've watched for several years. 17 years ago, political structures were completely different than they are, and he said, I believe that the closer we get to the end times, if fulfillment, God can fulfill these prophecies any way he wants, but it looks like it would be like this, and this, and all these things, and people kind of laughed at him and said, that's crazy, it's impossible. It's the news yesterday and today. I don't know if he's coming back today or next week or next year. He could give us another 500 years. But let me tell you this. He is coming back. And if you believe that and put faith in that and you realize this is temporary, what comes after this is eternal, that matters more than this. It will affect the way you live. You will live by the faith of believing what's coming. That's the faith we're to live by. And when you live by that faith, the stuff of the temporary goes. Yet so many look at these verses and say, no. It's faith about the temporary that God will give it to me. Wouldn't that be nice? Don't take that away from me. But the longer you hold on to that, you're missing this. Here we go. Oh, this is going to get fun. Let me keep going. Verse 38. So he's making a statement that it's about faith in what God has promised. He is coming back. There's good, all of it. We're going to have a judgment. We're going to face him. It's all there. Now watch this. And he quotes again. He's still quoting. In your Bible, do you see these as quotes? We're going to get to that in a minute. But my righteous one will live by faith. All right, so if you're going to explain these verses to somebody, the first thing you want to do is explain, well, who are the righteous ones? Right? And so in chapter 11, what we've talked about the last 2 weeks, who are the righteous ones? The ones, or let me ask you this, how did they become righteous? By faith. Their faith, when they believed God, it was credited to them as righteousness. So if you're going to explain verse 38, the place to start is, let me tell you who the righteous are. They're the ones who had faith in what God said so that it changed the way they made decisions, it changed their behaviors, and they not only had faith to start with, but they lived by that faith, and it proves that back when they had that faith and they believed God told them something, and they believed what God was going to do what he said, it was credited to them as righteousness before they ever did an action. You with me? I don't want to preach last week's sermon. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back and watch it on YouTube. It's what happened to Abraham. It says it was credited to him as righteousness because he believed God. Therefore, he took his family and moved. Which came first? The believing in God, the faith, and the credit to righteousness happened before the actions. However, because it was credited to him as righteousness, there are actions. They are the fruit of it. They will always be there. If you don't have the fruit of faith in the way you're living, you may not have had it at the beginning. You say, oh, but I believe in God. Are you really taking him at his word that he's coming back and you need to be ready? Or are you living for yourself? Are you bowing to other gods? Or are you like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that only worship the Lord? Are you understanding the complexity of this? We can think we're okay because I believe in God, but did you really put your faith in God alone? I think there are a lot of people that are going to get to heaven, and Matthew talks about it, who are going to get to heaven and say, but wait, I thought I was saved. Look at all I did for you. And he says, yes, but I never knew you. That's a scary verse. Religious but not born again. All right, so who are the righteous? Those who have righteous credited to them because of their faith. Now, I told you this is in quotes. Oh, I want to say this before I go on to where it comes from. Let me finish verse 38. My righteous one will live by faith. I take no pleasure in the one who shrinks back. Well, if you stopped right there, you'd wonder, are those Christians that shrank back? Or are they unbelievers that shrink? What's happening there? And for clarification, verse 39 is given to us. Watch this. But we do not belong to those who shrink back. Aha. So who are the we? The believers, the righteous. We do not belong to the group that shrink back. Keep going, because they shrink back and are destroyed. But we belong to those who have faith and are saved. Two different groups of people. On one hand, what's the end result? They shrink back and are destroyed. On the other hand, the other result, this group of people have faith and are saved. Those are the differences. Do these people have faith? No, that's why they shrink back. That's why they're destroyed. That's why they're not saved. They never had faith. Oh, they had a certain level of belief, but they never had faith. Are you hearing me? So he's saying, works don't save you, but if you don't have works, you better be looking at why. Don't fool yourself. Don't let Satan tell you, you're good enough to be saved. Because you'll be one of those standing in glory going, I thought I was saved. Are you hearing me? It's a warning. Now, here we go. This is a quote that comes from Habakkuk chapter 2. You say, well, where is Habakkuk? It's a small book. Well, if you go back to find the end of the Old Testament, it's back 4 books from there. So it's not that hard to find. They're all small books. If you find Matthew and then just back up a little bit, you'll find Habakkuk. I want you to find Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2. Watch verse 2, starting in verse 2. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. Now, does that sound important if God said that? Yep. For the revelation, watch this, awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. What is that talking about? What revelation needs to be taken out so that everyone understands that it's going to come? It speaks of the end. He's clear. And in fact, if you go on through the rest of the chapter, he's talking about the warnings against things that we will be held accountable for. That we're judged according to what we've done. And it's scary. And so the whole point is because the end is coming, life on this earth does not end in death. It just moves us to the next more permanent position. That's the beginning of, so what's he quoting? Don't leave here yet, but what's he quoting in Hebrews 11? He's quoting this passage that is clearly about the end time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Now, as you're looking at it, it says, though it linger, wait for it. If it won't prove false, but you've got to wait for it. Do you have it yet? No, why not? Because you have to wait for it. Do you believe it's coming? Folks, that's faith right there. When we talk about earthly hope, is I want something, desire, mixed with uncertainty. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I hope I get it. That's our definition. What is biblical hope? It is confidence with waiting. I don't have it yet, but I know it's coming. That's my hope is in Christ. And so what we've got is a definition of biblical hope and biblical faith in this passage. Verse 4, keep reading. Now, see, the enemy is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness, which is quoted in the New Testament as he will live by faith. What that by faith means in the New Testament is the faith that he has that was credited to him as righteousness. He has it. Now he continues to live by that faith. Paul puts it this way, living by faith from first to last. That's how we live by faith. Living by faith doesn't mean when the odds are against me, and it's something I really want, but I don't know I'm going to have, if I truly believe God's going to give it to me, he will. That's not the definition of living by faith. Now, I can pray about something like that and say, God, I really think I need this, and I really want it, and if I get it, I give you credit for giving it to me, but you know better. If I don't want it, please don't give it to me. That's faith. Now, let's keep going. God's view of the righteous living by faith, we've got to go back to Hebrews 11 now. Do you understand the context now of Hebrews 11? I've gone through and I've picked different parts of the context over the last 2 weeks and now today. The context of Hebrews 11 now is living in light of his return. Do you see that as obvious now that you look at the end of chapter 10, going into 11, that he's explaining what it means to live in light of his return? That's the focus. And I'm going to prove it to you. In step 1, we're going to look at this chapter in 2 steps. Step 1, I've covered over the last 2 weeks. It's from 10:36 to 11:16. It's talking about the righteous one. If he's setting up in these verses for what chapter 11 is going to be, as I said, the first thing he's got to do is explain who is righteous. We've done that. Then we explain that their faith is based on believing in what comes after this life is more valuable than what comes in this life. Do you see that? That their righteousness was credited to them by their faith before they had done action. They believed God, and that's what was credited to them as righteousness. And in the New Testament, because he's using Old Testament examples, in the New Testament it's even made more clear what specific thing are we supposed to put our trust in and believe God's word about in order to be saved. Very clear in the New Testament. What is it? Jesus Christ, his death on the cross, and his resurrection. And when you add to it his ascension, it's just the icing on the cake. Wow. But it's also to prove this, and this is the main point. Get this or you won't understand the point of chapter 11 as this, that the righteous person will not shrink back. They don't. Saved people who are truly saved don't shrink back. Now we get to discuss what it means to not shrink back. And he explains that. This is step 2, because he says, here's how you are righteous, but the righteous don't shrink back. Those are the two, remember I told you the 2 different groups at the verse 39? So here he's laying out what's it mean to shrink back. How do I know if I've shrunk back? Because has there ever been a time in my life I questioned what God was doing, wasn't sure it was right, didn't feel right to me? How do I know whether or not I've shrunk back? This is step 2 in his explanation of chapter 11, and this is where we're going to be picking up. Because what I've talked about so far is all the way down to verse 12, and so we're going to be looking at, in the next 15 minutes, from 13 on, and this is going to make so much sense. All this so far was to bring us back to this spot where we can see what he's saying in Hebrews 11 and the point of the chapter. And here we go. There are 2 ways to not shrink back, 2 different scenarios to not shrink back. And we saw it with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we're going to see it in the examples given in this passage. One is, I stood my ground and God gave me the victory. Who wants that in their life? The other one is going to be, I stood my ground and was persecuted for it, and even died for it. How many want that? No. Tell you what, God, I'll make a deal with you. I'll put my faith in you if you promise me one scenario and not the other. Is that faith? But what if I really believe God will only give me this scenario and not that one? Does that become faith? No, that's actually just trying to take control out of God's hands. And what we're going to see, and I'm just going to tell you up front, is that not shrinking back is not about the result. It's about what I do until God gives me the result he wants. Shrinking back is not about the end. It's about me. So let's take a look and see if I'm just a wacky old preacher or if this makes sense. Either way, if you're going to stand your ground and you don't know which scenario God's going to put you in, there are unknowns. Kind of like Abraham, go to a land I will show you. He didn't know what was up. He didn't know what was going to happen, but okay, God, if you're taking me there, I would rather go by your side in wherever you take me than to stay here. That's the attitude. Now watch this. It does take courage, and the author of Hebrews starts out with that. Verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Did it take courage for Abraham to say, God said people were going to come through this guy right here, my son, and now he's telling me to sacrifice him? I don't know how God's going to fulfill his promises, but he said he would, and now he's telling me to do this. So if I obey, God's got some way to do it. I don't know what that way is. I have some ideas of how he could do it. Doesn't that sound a lot like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm just going to trust him to do it. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead. Did he know that he would? In fact, did God have to? He brought up a completely unexpected solution. That's the way God works. But he was able to do that for Abraham when Abraham proved his faith. Faith was believing that God could, but not knowing what God's going to do. God may have a better way, and I'll take that. Look at verse 20. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regards to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshiped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents, listen to this, hid him for 3 months when he was born because they saw that he was no ordinary child and they were afraid of the king's edict. Were they afraid? Yes, but did they obey? Yes. Why? Because they had courage. Oh, they were not afraid of the king, but correct. They were not afraid of the king because they had faith in God, but they knew what the king was trying to do. Does that make sense? By faith, when he had grown up, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. What did he give up to be faithful? You see, here's the thing. It took so much courage to do what he did. And yet, what is that faith based on? Here we go. We're back up and get the passage I didn't read to you a minute ago. See if this doesn't have anything to do with they're giving examples of how people live by faith, by believing in the future. Start at verse 13. 11:13. All these people were still living by faith when they died. So when they died, they were still looking which direction? Forward. They did not receive the things promised. All right, so if they didn't receive the things promised and they get all the way to death, did God fail them? God only failed them if they didn't get it in this life, and this life is all that mattered. But if they didn't get it in this life, but God is still going to fulfill his promises, when is that going to happen? Later. And so you get paid at the, some people might, but most people, they get paid at the end of every day. No, then why are you motivated to get up the next day and go to work? You didn't get paid. Because you know the check's coming. And so it motivates you today to get up and work because you know if you don't, you're not going to get the reward later. Do you see how it motivates us? It's the same thing. If you really believe what's coming later, it motivates you today. You're working for that. You're not working for today. You're not making decisions. Yeah, but today I'd rather be fishing. Yeah, but tomorrow I need to pay the mortgage. Are you hearing? Okay, let me keep reading. Let's show you how it's all focused on the future. It says, they did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. What's their motivation? Heaven in the future is the motivation to live by faith while you're here. You know what's interesting is when it describes faith, it says in order to have faith, you must believe, in the same chapter, that God created the universe. How's that for going to the beginning? And in the same chapter, we believe he created the universe, but we live knowing his word will be fulfilled, that he's coming back, this will all be erased, and we got a new place to live with him. In this chapter, it covers from beginning to end that we believe that, and that affects the way we live. So, since I'm almost out of time, let me do this quickly. Let me show you the two different results. Look at verse 29. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land. Is that a miracle? How many of you want to see miracles like that? The only way to see a miracle like that was to obey God through 10 plagues. You hearing me? And standing up against the Egyptians who wanted to kill you during that time and abuse you during that time because you were obeying. And it almost caused the Israelites to waver. They were like, Moses, stop this. We'll just stay here in slavery. It took faith to finally obey God because God said, if you follow me, I will deliver you. And they get out there, and here comes the enemy to destroy them. And God puts down a pillar of fire and smoke between them to protect them. And they got the sea on one side of fire and cliffs. They can't go anywhere. How many of you want to live in that position? Oh, we don't want that. We just want to part the sea. Well, look, the parting of the sea came by faith up to that point. And so what happened? By faith, waters of the ocean parted. And I believe we can see things like that. But when Egypt tried to do so, they were drowned. Why? Because they weren't there by faith and obedience. Let's keep going. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell. Yeah, it did. They came down. And what did the Israelites do to make those walls come down? Walk without saying a word until God said, yell. And who took those walls down? The volume of the voices? God tore those walls down because of their faithfulness and their obedience. You hearing me? Is that a result of faith? Yes. Keep reading. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. It saved her life. Can faith save your life? Yes, it can. Like, we want to stop in some of these verses. Let me just keep going a little bit further, though. And what more shall I say? I don't even have time to talk about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith, ready for this, conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fire of the flames, escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, who became powerful in battle, routed foreign armies, women received back their dead, raised to life again. Yeah. What did that? Faith. Every one of these said faith, by faith, these things happen. So we all want to sign up if I stop the sermon right there. It's the middle of a verse. Don't matter, Pastor, just stop right there. We'd like it a whole lot better if you just, I won't shrink back if I know that the giant's going to fall every time I step up to a giant. If every time I put my feet in the sea, the waters are going to part. Every time I throw my net on this side of the boat, I'm going to get it full of fish. I'll be happy to be courageous and faithful. Just don't read the rest of the chapter. Right? In the middle of the verse, it goes on, there were others who were tortured for their faith. Maybe they just didn't have enough faith that God would free them. Would you accuse them of that? Oh, if they'd have believed enough, God would have healed them and kept them from that. Do you believe that? I will not condemn them for not having faith if they're listed in the Hall of Faith chapter of the Bible. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released. Why did they refuse to be released? Because they would not go against their belief in God. They would not bow. Refused to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. What are they looking for? Where's their eye? Here and now or there and then? Verse 36, some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. Well, God really let them down, didn't he? No, because they didn't see their promise fulfilled here. They get to see it fulfilled there. That's faith. Not just believing God will give it to me here. See, the passage just doesn't support anything but this. Keep going. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskin and goatskin, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. Does every righteous, faithful person get to see Goliath fall, the water part? I'm going to say yes, but not in this life. Because we will see the promises of everything God said is coming true. And there will be a time, there will be no more sadness, no more sickness, no more sin, no more crying. No, is it coming? Yeah, it's coming. Are we guaranteed it here? No. But regardless, you stand up to that giant not knowing what God's going to do with it. Because God can, but he may have a better purpose. You walk up to that sea, put your toe in there, because you don't know what God's going to do. But God, if you want to part these waters, you can part them. And I'm standing here to prove you did this. But if not, I'm ready to meet you. You see, faith doesn't shrink back, even though you don't know what God's going to do, because God's the one deciding. And I trust that. That is such a greater faith than believing God will instead of that he could. That faith has nothing to this faith. I'm almost done. Verse 38. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. Is this speaking to the first group or the second group? It could be both, but I think it's primarily talking about those who suffer while they're here. Those that don't shrink back, but don't get to see Goliath or the enemy fall, but they live by faithfulness all the way to the end. Man, do they have a resurrection. And God says of them, the world is not worthy. The world would look at them and say, they're worthless. They're meaningless. God says, you have no clue. They're of far more value than you'll ever be aware. Verse 39, these were all commended for their faith, all of them. Yet none of them received what they had been promised. Well, that's unfair, isn't it? No, because it's not that they won't receive it. They didn't receive it while here. So the whole point of the chapter is to live by faith, you must be focused on what? Out there, the future. Now, let me finish reading the chapter. Since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect or complete. The whole idea is, you think it'd be good that we could stand up to a giant, we could do this, do that. Look, if you think that's good, God's not cheating you. You just wait till you see what he's got in store. If I were you, I wouldn't want to miss it. Now, I might be off my rocker. You guys might think I'm nuts. But if that's what chapter 11 was actually about, was actually trying to convince us not to live for this world and put our faith into faith here, but it was about putting our faith in what God has said about the future so we can put up with what's here. If it's not about that, no, if it is about that, and if I'm right, just maybe, I wonder if chapter 12 would start out something like, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, meaning from beginning to end. For the joy set before him endured the cross, suffered while here, scorning its shame, but sat down at the right hand of the throne of God up there. Consider him who endures such opposition for sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. You would think chapter 12 would say that if I was right. Y'all get the point. That's what this passage is about. Faith is living in light that Jesus is coming. The question is, are you ready? I ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. I really want you to take a moment to think about this, because I do believe that there are many people that are religious. And if you ask them, are you sure you're going to heaven? They will say, yes, I was baptized. Well, good. Well, yes, I spoke in tongues. Well, yeah. Yes, I've done this, I've done that. Look, I don't care about the things you've done. What I do care about is if you've put your faith in Jesus Christ, believing that he is coming, and that we need to live for him and for the future, not just for this life. Some of you are so burdened by this life, and you feel like time is running out on some things, and maybe I'm never going to have this, I'm never going to have that healing, I'm never going to get that, I'm never going to, if that's weighing you down too much, it's because you're too focused on here. You need to be saying, but maybe God put me in this position for me to stand with courage, and even in not being aware of what's going to happen, to just trust him for the outcome. So Lord, whatever's going to happen in this outcome, I want to, at the end of it, say, I obeyed you and stood next to you regardless of the outcome. Man, I'll tell you what, that's hard to start, but a way easier way to live. Once you get the hang of it, you don't want to go back. I just wonder if there are people today that are hung up on this life. And you know what? If you're so hung up on this life that you can't put faith in what God has for you, it may be that you still need to be saved. You need that faith that says, I'm turning my back on everything else, and I'm looking to Jesus Christ. I believe that he died for me on the cross. His blood paid for my sins. I'm going to heaven. I want to go to heaven to be with him. I want to be forgiven. I'm a sinner. He's got to do it. And so, Jesus Christ, I trust you. I'm giving my life to you. I'm putting my faith in you. I'm taking you at your word. I'm letting go of my desires, my thoughts. I'm giving them to you. Maybe you need to do that so that you have faith right now that will credit to you righteousness, because out of that will come the changed life. And if I've tried this religion for so long and my life's not changing. Well, I don't know your past, but with a good understanding of faith to say, all right, God, I want that faith that is credited to me as righteousness, a faith that fully believes in you, so that faith will live with me and cause me to live a certain way the rest of my life. Maybe you need to do that. You do it right now. Pray this simple prayer. Dear Jesus, I'm confused about my religious experience in the past. I thought I was saved. Maybe I'm saved, but I'm just not seeing my life demonstrate the fruit of righteousness and holiness and courage like what this chapter is talking about. Lord, I want to live by faith. I want to relinquish control, and I want you to take the driver's seat in my life. I'm asking you to forgive me of my failures, my weaknesses, my sin, my rebellious choices. Forgive me. And I want the Holy Spirit to come into my life because I'm credited with righteousness, your righteousness. And I want him to help clean this up. And I want him to help me make better decisions. And I want my life to display the faith that comes with salvation. Help me to be one of those who are righteous that does not shrink back. And if you will pray that, God will do that for you right now.